They are preventing melanated money to stay within our own community and serve our own interests. Because what they do with the black dollar, what do they do with the melanated money? They deposit it into Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo, and the very entities that bought and sold us during slavery in the first place. These are the banking houses that have been established since the first Wall Street. The black churches are guilty in the financing and gentrification of our communities, and they're complicit in funding these democratic campaigns that loan our money to allow police genocide and systemic injustices to continue. These pastors are taking black money and giving it to white banks to do the devil's work. I rapped about this. 20,000 indigenous are buried under Wall Street. Yeah. The name Wall Street comes from the slaves being lined up from the East River to the Presbyterian Church in New York City. Even that has its own symbolism. I don't even stand in grocery lines like that on purpose to disrupt this system. And I'm not gonna stand 6 feet away from you. I'm finna stand 4 feet away from you. Before the stock exchange of Coca-Cola products and tech companies, our ancestors were the stock. Now every human through the birth certificate is a stock. And let me show you how they saw us as a stock. The word draft in sports comes from the draft from slavery, which means a citizen being examined by a slave master. Listen, because you'll never watch the drafts in sports the same again. When the NFL tells of how fast the first draft pick runs and jumps compared to the 5th draft pick, when the BMI of the athlete is analyzed, it all originated in the slave trade. We were sold to banking houses that built AIG, Chase, Aetna, and New York Life and made quadrillions off of our ancestors' back. Our ancestors' value was measured by their physical condition. The dexterity was measured by how high they could jump, how much they could lift, how fast they could run, and how big they were. Do you see how this manumission of the sports industrial complex has manipulated us now? If not, I got more proof when we get to the fashion part of this presentation. Our trauma and drama have been weaponized for centuries from our ignorance. It's true that our people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, and we just play into it willingly because we'd rather entertainment rather than education. When our ancestors first got out of slavery, they built schools. They wanted to read and learn. Now we a little too comfortable in our AC, man. Jews don't call each other kikes. Gays don't call each other fags. But we the only ones that call each other niggas. Maybe after this latest PSYOP reveal, you'll change your language that's being used against you in this maritime court of law. Have you ever looked closely at the word niggas, with language being originally written from right to left? You'll begin to look at things differently. Why niggas backwards is sagging. It comes from slavery, when the white man would sodomize our men and require them to sag their pants as a sign of what just happened. They would even use our own people, many times our own family members, to rape us, to breed us like their descendants do to cattle this day. Our men, our great uncles, were bound by hands and feet, then positioned spread eagle, and would be molested and raped in front of others. This was called buck breaking. And I believe that's why I cried so hard after watching those documentaries of the animal abuse that turned me plant-based. That trauma is still in my bloodline too. The psychological manipulation and emotional delusion from slavery runs deep in our DNA, as our ancestors were forced into many compromising situations. I believe that's why we're so flashy now. It's a band-aid on our emotional wound propagated by music and movies. In modern times, it represents whose bitch is who in the penitentiary. And it's this very trauma from slavery that causes men to think they're not gay when doing this in jail. And the down low brothers who think they're not gay just because they decide to occasionally sex a man. This is the trauma being played out in the present moment that's stored in your DNA. That's why they can compartmentalize their actions from who they are, because years earlier, from their former incarnation or from earlier in their bloodline, their family members had to splinter their consciousness just to survive. We incarnated during this time to become whole again. That's why I'm glad I waited until later in life to choose a partner, because many of us are broken. And because of the modern day manipulation of our emotions, we can't sit still to find out why we can't sit still. And the process of being humiliated and then brought into the fold continues to this day in the music industry, which is called cult complicity. The history of buck breaking is why this term is now called blackmail, which is also a compromising situation being held against you in perpetuity. I cannot speak for every musician in the industry, but many of them are filmed in compromising situations to buck break them or blackmail them. And as a side note, this was amazing. Look, so during the editing process, Sophia looked up to me with one of those looks like, let's go outside. And during our walk, this guy, he was, some of y'all will get that. And he popped trunk on these hoes. You know what I'm talking about. Yellow lights are bouncing to the beat. And it hit me. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I began to pray for him and his lineage, because he knows not what he does. And I ain't gonna lie, it's tempting to put at least a couple of 6x9s in the Audi, you know. Because I enjoyed the 12s that I had back in the day. But again, it's a deeper issue in our tissue that's playing out on the outside. So pay attention to things like this that you're drawn to. Until you make a conscious decision to stop the cycle, it will continue in the next generation, in your lineage, and the next incarnation of your consciousness. This information resonated with me because I'm not exempt. I've recognized in my DNA where I've suffered in past lives, and the scars and the birthmarks that appear on my body today. Every thorn in my flesh has been analyzed. That is why I can successfully offer treatments and healing modalities to the collective through the Affluence Alliance. My backup page was devoted to healing, but I'll share some of my secrets in Captain's Log in my story, so you can feel free to heal as well. I'm not always on social media, because just like on That's So Raven, Allah will take a hold of my awareness and bring me back to a time or a wound or a scar to bring light to it. And I want to expand and ascend. So I have to pay attention to what God is saying. Alignment is most important to me. And it is my intention that you're empowered to find and fulfill your own purpose through these volumes of revelations as well. So where were we? Right, this treatment of the melanated and the indigenous people. Yeah, it happened everywhere Rome conquered. The pain you experience today is not just because of your mommy and daddy issues. It's not just your baby mama drama. It's not just because of your baby daddy fiascos, but because those issues are actually triggers pointing to a deeper issue in your tissue. This pain is inherited from hundreds of incarnations and from hundreds of thousands of years, involving your thoughts and your family members' thoughts and the belief systems at that time and ideas in that area of town over the millennia of your incarnations that are embedded in your DNA. Waking up ain't pretty. Once you know better, you got to give yourself some time to get better. That's why I was not found on social media all of 2019. Through a willing spirit, you can conquer the same from your past. And I can help because many lessons I've passed, I now want to pass on this information. So when the Affluence Alliance comes back around, know that it will be in your best financial and emotional interest to sit in and listen. And it's free, y'all. Another form of manipulation in religion is where the deep state gives us a leader to follow right off the cliff. Take this leader here that many people call honorable. Louis Farrakhan, aka Louis Eugene Walcott, is planted by the deep state. Let me show you why. His father was a Jewish man of Portuguese bloodline. His mother is from Granada. He is a Prince Hall Mason, so how can you trust a man running a religion who mixes in Christianity and Freemasonry with his Islamic messages? Back in the day, the Nation of Islam was subsidized and financed by a billionaire named H.L. Hunt, who also funded the KKK. But check out the guy who started the Nation of Islam. His name was Wallace Dodd Ford. He was born February 25, 1893, and had over 50 aliases. He was excommunicated by the Moorish Science Temple leaders because it was believed that he poisoned Noble Drew Ali. So then he moved to Detroit, Michigan, and July 4th, 1930, I wonder where I've seen that date before. He established the Temple of Islam and then renamed it the Nation of Islam. 4 years later, he had to flee Detroit because the Detroit Police Department and the FBI were looking for him from a ritualistic murder that he sanctioned when one of his congregants murdered another congregant's brother in that temple in a secret satanic death ritual. The Mahdi, or God of this religion, is a white man born out of New Zealand. According to the Islamic Hadith, Volume 2, on number 122, it says that the Prophet Muhammad was a white slave owner. So how does this religion have all these black followers? Because of Malcolm X's charisma, organizational skills, and intelligence, which built the Nation of Islam from 32 members to 500,000 people in his lifetime. It's not a surprise the teachers of that religion don't teach that part. Just like in Christianity, the teachers of it don't teach how Yeshua says, ye are gods. Does this bring back any deja vu from y'all Christians out there? And they'll deny it. I don't blame them because capitalism pays, honey. If that's not enough, why was Elijah Muhammad friends with one of the leaders from the Yakuza mob of the Black Dragon Society in Japan during World War II? And why was H.L. Hunt, who was linked to the JFK assassination, why did he pay $33,000 to Elijah Muhammad and $100,000 a year to Nation of Islam? And why was Wallace D. Ford arrested for pistol whipping a patron at a restaurant he used to work at? And why was Wallace D. Ford arrested for violating California's prohibition laws for selling and distributing alcohol? 3 years later after this same guy who was written in the history books as God was arrested again for selling narcotics. Is this criminal behavior or... So what is this man doing as a god in the eyes of Elijah Muhammad? And what was the national secretary of the Nation of Islam in the 60s named John Ali doing as a top FBI informant? And why was Richard Masada Aoki from 1956 to 1972 an FBI handle name of Richard Ford, which was one of the aliases of the Nation of Islam's founder, Wallace Dodd Muhammad? Planted spies and Trojan horses injected in Black America by the deep state is the real news we need to be learning about. Not this gossiping Wendy Williams and whatever's happening on the Breakfast Club. I've learned throughout this research, movies and TV shows are based on real life occurrences. And discovering this information and its spin-offs of information not included in this volume, I totally see it now. I'm done, yo. This double-mindedness and hypocrisy and the false prophets who remixed the Bible in 325 AD saying homosexuality is a sin, yet they running around with the gay mafia out the Vatican. This is how the deep state works. When you create your own opposition and groups for people to follow, then you have no real enemy. People will just pick a side that you already set up that they resonate with, just like the Bloods and Crips, just like the Democrats and the Republicans.